Hello, I'm Garner Mayor Ronnie Williams. We're here today for another episode of the show that we call Great People in Garner. With us today is Fire Chief Matt Poole. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Mayor.
You were born into a family of fire service. What inspired you through that family to get involved or want to be in fire service?
Well, my grandfather was a long-standing member of the department. He joined in late 1952 and retired in 1982. So I think he kind of got our family started in the fire service. He was a fire chief here for 20 years. He owned a fuel oil company, which was right behind the fire station, and lived on St. Mary Street. So he lived and worked nearby, and I think that as a volunteer, that fit that bill for him to be the fire chief during those times. So he kind of got us started in it. And then my father was a fire marshal for Wake County, and he was in charge of the training division. So he trained all firefighters that came through the Wake County system at some point in time or another. And so when I was a kid, on the weekends I would go out and I would tag along with my dad. So I thought everybody went to watch burning buildings and things like that. But and then about 13 or 14, I started training with them. Started taking classes, and it just went from there. But I'm a third-generation firefighter. So my grandfather was a long-standing volunteer member. My dad retired from the Wake County Fire Marshal's office. My uncle Jay Poole retired as the deputy chief of the Cary Fire Department. So it is definitely a family tradition, one that I have glad to have the opportunity to follow through.
You've seen fire service change over the years, and especially moving from a fully volunteer to paid volunteer. Talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, growing up my childhood, the fire department was an all-volunteer organization, and they didn't receive any funding. They had to make their own money. And so I saw the years that my grandfather was in the organization, of the fundraisers and the charities that made this truly a community service. And then as time changes and the service demand of the community changes, the department has too. So when I joined the department in 1995, we only had 6 employees, and it was still predominantly volunteer. So at night, after hours, it was still run by volunteer members of the organization. And then after that, again, the community changes, our responsibilities changed. We started running first responder or medical calls. And so we went from, during that time frame, from 1,500 calls a year to 3,000 overnight. And that just changed the dynamic. And then over time, I guess our bell curve of the fire department went from primarily volunteer and some career to now it's primarily career and some volunteer. And it's just based on the service demand that we have in the community.
Okay, the level of training is now mandated, right? And the training itself has changed over the years too.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the training requirements have definitely got more extensive throughout the years. I can remember when I got on the fire department, we had to have 36 hours of training per year. We typically got those on Tuesday nights where the volunteers assembled at the fire station. And now our career staff has to have a minimum of 240 firefighter hours a year and then 24 hours of medical training. So it's quadrupled over the last 20 years on not only what our training is, but what they're qualified and capable of doing as well.
The cost of service has increased over the years. Part of that's related to growth. Talk to us about the cost, the way it's increased, and what you've got to do to keep up with the standards.
And it's changed a lot. I tried to look back at some historical documents a few years ago to see, in the late 70s and early 80s, and they were operating off, $10,000 or $20,000 a year of donations. And when I got on in 1995, we were operating a little under $1 million a year. And now we're stewards of the taxpayers' dollars of approximately $4 million. So it has changed exponentially in the last several years. And so as the amount of funding has increased, obviously our demand has increased, but we are much more aware of the business model and how we take care of those funds.
A lot of your viewers probably don't understand the relationship between the town of Garner and the Garner Fire Department. You want to talk about that relationship?
We
smile because it's good, right?
Yeah, we do. We have a very good and unique relationship
Good word.
with the town of Garner. The Garner Fire Department is a private nonprofit organization. It has been since its inception of 1952. We are a contracted department with the town and also with Wake County. So we receive monthly appropriations through both financing entities. We service approximately 15 square miles of town district and approximately 60 square miles of county district. So where some municipal fire departments, they only concentrate on the actual town itself, we have a much larger scope when we service the Wake County or unincorporated area as well. So that makes it unique for us. However, I will say I think we have a great partnership and working relationship with both the town and Wake County.
And the funding, there's a percentages there where the funding is split between the county and the town. You receive that money, and tell us about that. It's a percentage ratio, right?
It's determined by a variety of data sets. So our cost share formula is based on tax value, it's based on service demand, heated square footage of the area, a number of variables go into that. And then the outcome is what percentage of our operating budget should the town and the county each share to make sure that we have enough funding to do what we've agreed to do.
The challenges you see arising in the coming years, they're probably stacked on top of each other, aren't they?
Well, yes, sir. So we are entering, and I call it an age of change for the fire service.
And it's a science now, right?
It is a science, I think the fire service goes through this every couple decades. So the fire service in general went from an all-volunteer organizations throughout the country to combination to now what the community asks us to do and what the community risks are, we have to be better prepared for that. So you have to have people willing and prepared and trained to combat those at a moment's notice. And so that is one of the biggest things that I deal with as a fire chief is not only are we caught up to what we should be doing now, but how do we plan for what's the next change? Our career dynamic has changed. So our employees, we've started to see attrition and retirement in the organization where the ones that started the career portion are now retiring. So the younger ones now have got to be trained to be the next leaders, and that goes across the fire service in general. The baby boomer generation is beginning retirement. And so my question, and I asked several of my colleagues this when we talk, is are we prepared for that change? And I think that's something that everybody has to be aware of. So, you were asking about what am I expecting in the future. We've got to be able to understand the growth of not only the town but Wake County and what their needs are.
Got to be ready to respond to it, sir.
And we've got to be able to respond, exactly. If you go back and you look at the town of Garner 10 years ago versus now, it's a different Garner. And I think the council and the elected officials have done a good job of, I call it controlled growth. We want to have growth, but we want to do it where you're building the appropriate town or what the vision is, and we just have to be prepared for that. So I think if you're asking me what the future is, I think a more professional, well-trained, and developing leadership in an organization is where we have to get to.
I know you got a son. Will you talk about him a little bit? Is he in the next generation of firefighters?
I hope not. I don't. I leave, those decisions will certainly be up to him, but I have a 12-year-old son. His name is Carter, and so he's grown up in the Garner school system, and he's a Garner boy himself, but as to his future in the fire service, I will completely leave that up to him. Being a Garner boy, my grandfather owned J&P Oil Company, and they were sponsors of Garner baseball for decades, and my grandmother and grandfather were baseball fanatics, and so I grew up Garner baseball, watching games and playing Little League myself, and so my son has taken up that interest as well.
You've actually coached some too, right?
Yes, sir. I helped coach him for several years, and then once he got to a certain point, he's outgrown my abilities. So he plays Little League Baseball. He currently is playing for a travel baseball team, and he plays third base and pitcher. But he's been very fortunate in Garner to have the leadership at Garner Baseball to help and develop him so far. And he enjoys the game of baseball. And so both of my grandparents are passed away, and I wish they had had the opportunity to see him play where they sponsored so many years ago.
What makes Garner an All-America city?
I tell you, I get asked that a lot because people outside of the communities, so other fire chiefs and things, they see that we were designated as that, and they ask what that is, and I try to put it in a real-world perspective. Garner's theme is a great place to be, and there is value to that simple statement, and it is. It is a great place. Our location is prime to other things across the state, but the community itself is amazing. So we do things. We just had a Relay for Life campaign and program, and it's amazing to go out there and see how Garner comes together. The Red Route battle that the mayor took on, those things you hear from other people, they don't happen everywhere. They don't. And they happen here. And so I'm really proud to be a part of what I consider to be an All-America city. And you'll see on the back of our fire trucks, we proudly post that emblem of being an All-America city.
Matt, I know also you're a member of one of the Rotary clubs in Garner. What is your interest in Rotary, and how do you participate? What do you get from it? That's what I need to ask.
Absolutely. So several years ago, I was asked by a local businessman, Johnny Foster, to come and do a program about the fire department to the Rotary Club. And when I went, I had never been to Rotary and didn't really understand what Rotary really was. And that morning, when I went and did that presentation, I heard them at the end of the meeting, they made a quote. They said, "Service above self." And I thought, that's what I do. That's what the fire department does. We provide a service. We are public servants. And I thought, if I'm going to get involved in a civic group, I want to serve in another capacity. And so I think at that meeting, I knew this would be a good fit for me. So I went to several meetings and got to know some individuals. And I was fortunate enough that Council Member Buck Kennedy sponsored me as a member, and I joined approximately 5 years ago. I've had perfect attendance ever since, and will be the president of the Rotary Club in 2016/17. But that group is a very special,
to say the least, yeah.
a very special group of individuals, and they have Garner as their best interest. They do a lot of things behind the scenes of Garner to make it better, and I'm really proud to be a part of that civic group.
It's a good service organization.
It is, and so my generation is not civically involved, and so what I've tried to do is to spread that across to say we've got to do better as our incoming leaders of the country and of the town. We've got to get more involved, and we've got to be prepared to replace the leaders of today. And so I guess that's part of why I'm in the Rotary Club. I enjoy the fellowship, I enjoy the camaraderie, but also they provide a great service to Garner.
Okay, 5 and 10 years from now, what do you see Garner as being?
Well, so I figured a question like this would come up, and I've watched a lot of your shows, and what I've seen is you always ask the questions. Nobody ever asked the mayor questions, so I'm going to turn it on you, and so I'm going to ask you, as the leader of Garner, Mr. Mayor, what do you see Garner in 5 to 10 years?
Well, Garner, to handle growth, I say we've handled it with progressive or managed growth, and that's paid off because there's not been a rush. There's still land to develop it. I see it as more of the same, but a more populated town with more advantages than White Oak. I mean, can you put another place to eat out there? Probably so, several more. So I see Garner as growing, and we pride ourselves on the quote-unquote small town atmosphere. So I see it some of the same, but with the growth that's taking place. Now it's your turn to answer the question.
Well, so I'm going to be politically correct and respond appropriately. So if the vision of the town is to grow in that capacity, the fire department just wants to be prepared for. And I think I think that's how Garner should grow, and that would be my vision if I was the leadership of the elected body to do so. So I'm glad you answered the question.
Very good, very good. Any other thing you'd like to take the opportunity to share with the viewers? A lot of people watching this show.
Yeah, I do. I want to put you in the hot seat for a couple questions. So how about this? So I'm not sure if the public is aware, but I grew up in the neighborhood of Heather Hills, and I had a crazy postman through my entire childhood. He was a Vietnam vet and was a Garner alderman, and was also my mailman. And one thing I remember in my childhood is the mailman would always speak to me and my family, and grew up together. But now he's the mayor. So my question is, why be the mayor? What is it? What do you like about it? And what do you feel like your goal or your vision is for Garner?
What do I like about it? I like doing what I'm doing now. I love people and I love being around people. And the more this morning we had a groundbreaking. For those events that bring people together, the raffles, the barbecues, they bring people together, and I like being a part of that. It goes with being mayor. What was the second part of your question? What? So I'm trying to avoid it.
No, I think this is good. You know, I think people need to hear you talk some. So, so what you said, what you like about being a mayor. What's the hard part about being a mayor? What's the things that people take for granted that is difficult to be the mayor of Garner?
Well, it's generic sometimes, but people come to you with a problem they have and they think you can solve it almost immediately. It doesn't always work that way. You have to work through the system and involve the professionals with the town, and the expectation that people have on the mayor. I cannot, and there's another thing, Matt, I sometimes ask myself, I get a lot of calls to be places, and I've always wondered if people want the mayor to be there, or do they want Ronnie Williams to be there? Can you break out the difference? I don't know. And the new town clerk, Stella, told me they want you to be there as the mayor, and you cover everything that way. So, Matt, the public has a perception of what a firefighter does. I think they believe you come to the fire station, sleep 24 hours, wax the trucks, and go back to bed. Well, tell us a typical day in the life of a firefighter.
Right, and so I think perception sometimes is different than reality, so I appreciate the opportunity to respond. And I'll speak on behalf of the Garner Fire Department, because every department is different and unique from each other. So a day in the life of a Garner firefighter starts at 7 a.m. When they come to work, and they work a 24-hour shift. So they work from 7 this morning to 7 tomorrow morning. They're here for 24 hours. So their day begins with a complete check of all of the equipment and the apparatus that they respond.
That's done each time the shift changes.
Every time the shift changes. So they go through and they make sure the apparatus or the fire engine is equipped and ready for duty.
Workable.
Yes, sir. They also, their day begins with fixing or maintenance of any equipment that needs to be done, or buildings or repairs and things like that. Training is a large time consumer for firefighters today. I had alluded earlier that it's 240 hours of firefighter training. So every day they have at least an hour or two of training on different categories. They have community service projects. So they go and do fire prevention and education to schools, rest homes, senior centers, community involvements. They go to daycares and do fire extinguisher training. We recently recertified the entire Garner Police Department operating staff with fire extinguishers. So we do some kind of community involvement almost on a daily basis. And then you get into the operations of the organization. So we run approximately 5,000 emergency responses a year. That is the highest call volume outside of Raleigh and Cary in Wake County. So Garner is a very busy emergency department. Kind of one of the perceptions is that we fight fire all day long, and that's not the case. Fortunately, that's not the case. So 60 to 65% of our calls are medical calls. So anytime someone calls 911 to require an ambulance, if it is a life-threatening call, the fire department responds with the ambulance to assist. Sometimes we're closer than the ambulance, and we can start with immediate first aid. So that takes up some of the call volume. And then you have a large array of miscellaneous calls: motor vehicle accidents, trash fires, woods fires, grass fires, electrical investigations, false fire alarms. So Garner has a large commercial base, and so when a commercial building has a fire alarm, we have to respond to it not knowing if it's a false alarm or not. So an actual fire is a low percentage of what we do, but it's still a percentage. Garner has probably the highest structure fire rate of anybody in Wake County based on their call volume, but it doesn't happen every day. So I think that as a misconception of the department, no, they don't sleep all day. They're required to work from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., normal business hours, just like everyone else. And then after that, they eat a meal just like everyone else. And then honestly, most of the firefighters now are going to school to try to get their degrees online. So the nighttime is consumed of training, education, things like that, and then being prepared for emergency responses during the night.
I know you're a part of it, but at Christmas you guys make contributions to the burn center. That's very rewarding, I guess.
Yes, sir.
And that money comes from the Fireman's Day.
Yep.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so we have several community fundraisers that the fire department does each year. Our largest one is our annual Fireman's Day event. It's in the first Saturday in October. So we typically...
And it's been going on since 1952.
It has. It's been going on since the inception of the department. And we do a barbecue where we cook and prepare our own food. We have gone to a more vendor-based, festival-based venue. And so we've grown from just a parade and barbecue to now we have vendors. We do fire prevention and education seminars out here. We do a live burn demonstration where we set rooming contents on fire to let people see just how fast fire can progress. That's our largest fundraiser, and the majority of those funds go towards the North Carolina J.C. Burn Center. So UNC has the closest burn center to our area, and so each year the proceeds from Fireman's Day goes towards buying the people in the burn center Christmas presents and then a donation to itself. We also do a Relay for Life golf tournament and a Relay for Life softball tournament, and all those funds go back into our Relay for Life donation campaign as well. So I think when you talk about the perception of the fire department, a lot of people don't understand just what civic involvement we have outside of the emergency responses.
Matt, I know you strive constantly to get the public involved in what you do in town. There's speculation, rumors, whatever. You are planning a Citizens Fire Academy to take place toward the fall?
We are. So yeah, the town of Garner has a Citizens 101 program, and the police department has a Police 101 or Citizens Academy, and I think both of those programs have great value to, we had talked earlier about the perception of the fire department of teaching citizens what the fire service really is about. So we've spent the last several months internally developing a 6 or 8 week program of a Citizens Fire Academy. So we'll be releasing that information in the spring, hoping to get a large applicant pool, and our first program will be in the fall of the year. We're going to make sure it does not conflict with the either Garner program, but we hope citizens would show some interest and come out and take part of a good course that will let you see all facets of not only the Garner Fire Department, but the fire service as a whole.
Matt, there's opportunity for the fire department to become accredited. You know, we've got that with other departments in the town. Or is that something you're striving to do?
Yes, sir.
How many hours? Tell us about it.
Well, I think, so I looked into accreditation almost 5 years ago, and at that time I felt like we as an organization could not administratively take on that task. We had to do some house cleaning ourselves, so we put it on the back burner, and we've gotten support from the town and the county throughout the last 5 years to increase our administrative staff, and we've increased some policies and procedures to now I think we're able to combat that challenge itself. So hopefully we will enter the accreditation process by the fall of this year, and we're estimating approximately 3 years to completion. But at the end of it, and the motto for the fire service accreditation is continual process improvement. And so that's my vision for the fire department as well, is how do we continually get better at what we do. So I think the town has been very proactive across all of its departments by looking into each accreditation model, and we would like to do the same as well. So hopefully in a few years, we will be an accredited department, which will be only one of two in Wake County.
Matt, I've heard you and maybe others refer to your fire department as a paramilitary organization. What does that mean to the public? Is that good news?
Well, the fire service is a paramilitary organization, so we are rank structure based for numerous reasons. On a daily basis, we collaborate just like any small business does. We have command
Have a plan of action.
Yes, sir. We have command staff meetings and we take input, but on an emergency response, we revert back to command and control. I will use a house fire as an example. A house fire, and I had described it in our documentary as orchestrated chaos. If you're at the street looking, it looks like a bunch of ants doing all kinds of things, and really everybody has a specific purpose. It is orchestrated chaos, and it is orchestrated through a command structure. So you have a chief officer, a company officer, down to the firefighters, and everybody has a role and responsibility, and that does come from the military itself. And what it does is it makes sure that we don't have any duplication of effort, and that we have a priority checklist that we make sure is being done effectively. So when they get there, life safety and property conservation in the fire service is number one and number two. The safety of our people is high there as well, and that's what those chief officers do. Is we put our lives, or the firefighters put their lives in danger for the citizens. So as chiefs, our job is to protect the firefighters, and that's where I interpret the paramilitary aspect of the organization.
Matt, this has been a good interview. I appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're busy, and I look forward to seeing you around town, going to lunch with you, whatever it takes. But it's been a good interview. Thank you for taking the time.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me. I have enjoyed it, and I hope you will spread the word about our upcoming Citizens Fire Academy.
I will do my best. God bless you.
Thank you. Nickel holding up $1 million bill.
I see the mayor. I don't see nothing else good over there.
5 minutes since we started the second take.
You want me to ask you some more questions?
No.
That's a good.
We have a rank structure. We've also changed over the last. Act like you know what you're doing.